Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. Downstairs neighbor demands we walk normal. So we do. And she hates it. We've been living in this apartment for 3 years. It's old. It's cozy. The building is 20 years old, and though the appliances and wall paint and carpets have been replaced, the floor has not. It's painfully thin. Every step we take creaks and groans, and it's annoying. Living on the 3rd floor, we know it's gotta be even more so for whoever lives below us. So, we've done our best to be mindful of their comfort, and try not to make too much noise. We had a new downstairs neighbor move in a couple months ago. And she is not convinced that we are literally tiptoeing around our apartment. Every time I get home and close my door, she's banging on my floor with a broom or something. Every time I cross the living room, banging. Every time I vacuum, banging. Every time my dog chews on a bone, she bangs on the dang floor, and it scares my poor dog. We've been living on eggshells trying to be courteous, but she's driving us mad with her insistent banging every time we take a step. I guess she had finally had enough, because she came upstairs to yell at us the other day. "You are too loud. You need to be courteous and walk normal. You have neighbors," she yells. She almost looked like she was going to cry. It was disturbing. We felt bad. My husband tried to explain that, "Ma'am, we do our best to be quiet, but these floors are really old and they creak. We're not stomping or jumping or running. We're living, but we'll continue to be considerate." She was not impressed with his answer, and continued to argue. "Well, I lived on a 1st floor before, and my other neighbors weren't loud like you. It's so loud and my job is so stressful, so I want you to stop stomping. I don't want to be a mean person, but I really think you're too loud. So you know what we agreed to? To walk like normal people." Okay, we'll walk normally," we said. This is exactly what we had been doing. Nothing different. So she still bangs on the floor and gives us nasty looks. But we are being normal people who walk normal and don't stomp around. Our dog is a normal dog who chews on bones and walks from his bed to his food bowl, and gets excited when it's time for walkies. We are so normal. We'll be moving in the next month, so it's no skin off my back. Hope the next tenant doesn't have kids, or maybe I do. And then she'll finally understand that we are normal people who walk normal. Maybe she'll miss us. Next story. I can't prop the door open? Alrighty then. I work for a small moving company in my city. We move furniture and decor to many different places throughout the city. We got a call about moving a large load of bookshelves to a rather large industrial building. We loaded up 2 18-foot box trucks full of shelves and were ready to move. When we arrived at the building, we pulled around to the loading dock and began offloading the shelves. As we were bringing stuff off the truck, I went to building security to open the door. There had been a recent string of shootings in our area, and everyone was locking all the doors. They handed me a doorstop and told me I could prop the door open since we have a large load. So I propped open the door and we got going. We no more had the first pallet off the truck when the building's maintenance manager came running towards us. He screamed at us, "What are you doing? You cannot have that door propped open." Now this man looked like he was somewhere between the ages of 76 and 105. He was as red as I've ever seen anyone. I calmly told him that security gave me a doorstop and told me since we have such a large load, we could keep the door propped open. Of course, he wasn't having it. "I don't care what security told you, you cannot have this door propped open." At this point, my Native American temper got the better of me. I replied, "Yes, sir." I walked over to the door and picked up the doorstop. I walked back to security and explained the situation. They rolled their eyes and explained that this crotchety old fossil is always causing problems all over the building. They told me I could still prop open the door, but now I was mad and was feeling petty. He doesn't want us to prop the door open? Alrighty then. There was a buzzer outside of the door, so I buzzed security asking them if they could open the door. Well, guess whose office was right by said door, and thus guess who security called to open the door and let us in? That's right, fossil man that was 2 days older than dirt. He opened the door and let us in. We made our delivery and came back to grab another pallet. I again buzzed security and they again asked Fossil Man to let us in. This happened twice more before he stopped me and said, if you wanted to keep that door open, you can since you have such a big load. I replied with the biggest smile on my face, oh no sir, this door cannot be propped open. I wouldn't want to upset anyone by doing that. He looked at me with a look on his face that was somewhere between murderous and the realization that he had made a huge mistake. 18 pallets later, we had the load delivered. And every single time, guess who had to let us in? It took us a little over 2 hours to get everything finished. The last pallet we delivered, I poked my head into Fossil Man's office and said thank you so much for your help. I'm pretty sure he popped a blood vessel. Next story. You're just joking? Great, Emma, head home. So I work at a Canadian coffee chain called Tim Hortons, basically Canadian Dunkin' Donuts. I was about halfway through my shift the other day when Kathy comes up to me while I was busy and says, "You're staying late 'cause you owe me a favor," and walked away. Someone had called in and she wanted me to cover part of their shift. Now if I stayed late I'd be working 12 hours, and I'm on my third day working out of 5 and had to be up early the next day for another shift. Not to mention I didn't even owe Kathy anything. The favor she's referring to is when she sent me home early 'cause we weren't busy, which she had to do or she would get in trouble. Now in Canada an employer can't force you to stay later like that, so I walked up to Kathy when I had a free moment and said, "If you want me to stay later you can ask me properly, I don't disrespect you so I expect to be given respect in return." Kathy gets snippy, "Oh calm down, I was just joking with you." I was about to fight back, but a light bulb went off in my head. I walked away and continued my work. When the people in the next shift started showing up I ran my plan past them and they gave me the go-ahead. Cue malicious compliance. Instead of staying later, I went home at my normal time. I didn't stay later as I hadn't agreed to anything. Nearly the second I sat down at home I got a call from none other than Kathy. Me, hello? Kathy, where are you? I said you were staying late today. Me, you said you were joking. Kathy, yeah, with how I asked, but I figured you needed hours and weren't gonna say no so I assumed you'd stay. Me, I can't, I'm busy, this is why you should have asked properly. Click. Kathy had to cover the shift. Worst part is I probably would have considered covering it had she just asked me nicely, but I'm a petty bee. Next story. I don't want the car. I'm not a malicious person, though I do feel some joy reading this sub. First off, my dad was a great man, he was just dumb sometimes. LOL. Some background, I am one of the youngest from a very large family. My mom passed away when I was 10. My dad, bless his heart, was from the generation where the man worked and the woman took care of everything at home. When my mom passed away, the responsibility of everything at home fell to the kids. By the time I was 11, I was regularly cooking dinner for 8 to 10 people. I had a long list of chores. Truly, it was fine. I'm sure I pitted myself some because my friends didn't have these responsibilities, but I really had a great childhood, minus the dead mom thing. When I was 16, my dad got me a car. I paid for gas with babysitting money, my dad paid for insurance and maintenance. I had to get my little sister and myself to and from school. I had to do the grocery shopping. I had to get the two of us to practices and meets. I had to run chores. I was responsible for driving her wherever she needed to go. My day consisted of getting to school, getting home, grocery store, making dinner if it was my turn, homework, practice, bed. Meets were on weekends. I never went out. I was never in trouble. I was an honors student. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I was a good kid. All was well, relatively. And then, my dad got a new girlfriend. Her kids were in high school with me. She told him that if I got to have a car, I should be fully responsible for it. After all, her kids were. So my dad sat me down and said, "I've decided that if you want a car, you have to pay for it. I expect you to take over payments, maintenance, and insurance." I told him I couldn't afford that. He told me I'd have to get a job. I said I had no time for a job. he told me I'd have to figure it out. So, cue malicious compliance, I guess. I went and got my keys and handed them to him. I told him I didn't want the car anymore. He was a little shocked, but I guess he thought I'd come crawling back for it soon. LOL. The next morning, my sister and I missed the bus. I had to wake him up so he could drive us to school. He was pissed. We got a ride home from school. At 5:30, when dinner was supposed to be on the table, I was reading on the couch. He came home, "Where is dinner?" I said, "Oh, I didn't have a car to get to the store." "I'm sure there are some leftovers you can heat up." He told me I'd have to start walking to the store. I told him I didn't have time. Finals were coming up. Didn't he care about my grades? An hour later, I told him it was time for practice. My sister and I needed a ride to and from practice. He told me to call a friend. Sorry, I can't. No one on the team lives in this town. It would be really out of the way for anyone else. He drove us. Then he picked us up, silently fuming the whole way. The next morning, oops. We missed the bus again. I had to wake him up again, plus he had no orange juice in the morning, on account of no one going to the store. Once again, no dinner on the table. He had to drive me to the store when he got home. Once again, we needed a ride to practice. I informed him that the meet that weekend was an hour away and we had to be there at 9. That was enough for him. It was probably the most parenting he'd done in 30 years of being a father. He called me to the top of the stairs. He tossed my car keys up to me. "I've decided you can have your car back. I'll pay for half of the payment and half of the insurance. You can only use it for school, practice, meets, chores, and driving your sister." I laughed, tossed the keys back, and said that's all I use it for, anyway. I don't want the car. Sell it. 5 minutes later, he's screaming my name from the bottom of the stairs. He overhand whips the keys up the stairs. Y'all, my dad never got mad. His new deal was he'd pay for everything but gas, but I wasn't allowed any personal use of the car. I said so, I have to pay to do chores and I get no benefit from it. No, thank you, and I tossed the keys back down the stairs. Half an hour later, he demands my presence in the living room. He calmly said he would pay for everything but gas. I'd have the use of the car when I wanted, but I had to do all the stuff I'd previously been doing without complaint until his girlfriend got into his head. He didn't phrase it like that, of course. Then he said, "I hope you learned a lesson here." I did. LOL, I certainly did. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.